Very well. At this time, I want to also just introduce the first recovered individual who is online from his parish and his home. And I'll call him Mr. R. I spoke to him today, and he said he wanted the opportunity, having offered it, to just say a few words about his experience. And if there are any issues that he wants to raise, we will allow him that opportunity. Mr. R, you're online?
Yes.
All right, welcome. You have Jamaica listening to you. So tell us a little about your experience, and just what's on your mind.
Yeah, my experience was a good experience still, because while I was there, I wasn't feeling no pain and no side effect was on me. So I was doing all right, but from my side where I was, I heard plenty people coughing and sometimes even cry, praying and stuff like that. So I know that the COVID was very serious challenge for them. Yeah. But
Right.
for me, it was a challenge because I never have any side effects like any running nose, no coughing, no heavy cold and so forth. Only like for 3 days in the first week when I got like the 10th of March, I went there. So 3 days before that, I was having a little cough with a little cold. So I was tested positive with symptoms of the COVID. So I was there for a while, but within myself, I never really felt sick. Yeah, but I know it.
Okay.
They said it was there, so I just, yeah.
Okay, well, let me ask you one other question, because we're not going to keep it too long. How have you been accepted back in your community, having gone back? And how was your treatment generally in the institution, but also going back in your community, interacting with your friends and so on? How has that been?
Just there, and I'm never in with no friends or nothing like that more, and they have partner and just I'm not really exposed to know what like that. Yeah?
Okay. All right. So we wish you all the best, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to come online, even for a short moment. I wanted Jamaica to hear your voice, because I think we have to make the point that there is a lot of us who should understand and appreciate that this is a virus that can cause you to get sick or ill, but with treatment you can recover. With that recovery, you can become as normal as any other person in our society, and you should be allowed to take your rightful place in your community, with your family, with your friends. In other words, we really want to discourage the discrimination, because we have had cases of it. Even persons who are suspected to have COVID-19, they have had to suffer abuses, threats, isolation, meaning persons ignoring them. And, there's going to be a lot of Jamaicans who have COVID-19. Next year, this time, it may be just like H1N1 or the flu. And what we want society to do is to help each other, not to treat anyone as an outcast. And as the first recovering patient, I really want to thank you for the opportunity, just coming on and to giving your testimonial, because you sound like you're as strong as ever and ready to go back to work, right?
Yeah, man.
All right.
Everything up and running, man.
Excellent. Thanks again. All the best to you.
Okay.
All right. So we'll close in terms of the presentation now and take questions. Floor is open for questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister. I just want to remind members of the media, if you have a question, you just click on the raise hand button and we'll acknowledge. Just identify yourself, and then you can go ahead with your question. We have a question from Edmund Campbell. Hello, Edmund. Edmond, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I had a little issue a while ago. I'm sorry. All right, a few questions.
Just identify your media
Edmond
house.
Campbell, the Gleaner Company. Are you hearing me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Edmond Campbell, the Gleaner Company. Minister, a few questions. You spoke about the 69 households that you are monitoring in Portland Cottage. Could you tell us, first of all, why you're monitoring that community and those persons in particular? The other question is in relation to the nurse who was tested positive for coronavirus recently. Have other health workers who have worked alongside her, have they been asked to self-quarantine? And if so, how many of them? And how many health workers in total at this time are in quarantine?
I'm going to ask the Chief Medical Officer to assist with the responses to those questions. CMO.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, well, the first question is that the first question I will answer: how many healthcare workers are presently in isolation or quarantine? We have one healthcare worker that is in isolation, and I know that there are some persons that are in quarantine from the Percy Junior Hospital that was reported. There are no other persons presently that are in quarantine or isolation as healthcare workers. In terms of the community quarantine, I would like to point out that there is an error in the report, and it is that we really are monitoring 50 households in association with the first positive person from the Corn Peace settlement. The majority of those households are within the Corn Peace settlement, and then we have additional households that are in Portland Cottage and Longville community, and in Hayes as well. So the 69 households here, that I believe is an error, but we can double check on this. But as far as I am aware, there are 50 households that we are monitoring with regards to the first patient identified in Corn Peace. For those 50 households, we have interviewed over 250 persons, and there have been about 30 persons that we have identified as close contacts to the first person that was positive and then the second related contact that was positive. So those persons have all been tested, and you will see that there is an increase in the numbers that you have seen in terms of 6 persons that are positive, that are really very close contacts of those persons. So that was an expectation. We expected that based on the level of contact that these persons had, that they would have been positive. What's the other part of the question?
How many healthcare workers are in? You answer that?
How many of the contacts?
Minister, could you just allow me one final question?
All right, quickly. Go ahead. Quickly.
What is the current health status of patient 1, previously patient 0?
Of patient 1, what was the last part?
What's the health status? How is she doing?
Okay, so patient 1 is doing pretty well, and I just want to give you a general update where that is concerned. Because of the 44 positive patients that we have, 2 were sent home, as you know. We announced the 3rd patient that died, and we have 27 persons that are presently asymptomatic. Now, those persons that are asymptomatic, the number of days vary. So we are allowing 4 asymptomatic days before we do the first test for discharge. So we have some persons that are still within those 4 days, so they have not done their first test yet, And then we have some that have done a first test and some that are waiting on a second test. We have 8 persons that we would classify as having moderate symptoms. And by moderate symptoms, what I mean is that they are on oxygen therapy or they are wheezing. And we have 6 persons that have mild symptoms. And by mild symptoms, I mean that they have a sore throat or a dry cough. Those are the present symptoms. Of course, there are other symptoms that we can classify as mild or moderate, but those are the symptoms that our patients presently have that we are reporting. So that was just an update to give you an overall perspective. And patient 1 is in the asymptomatic group, and she is to have further testing. Her initial negative discharge test was still positive, and so we are keeping her to repeat those tests until they become negative, and when she has 2 negative tests, then she will be discharged.
Thank you very much, CMO. We're going to go to Alicia Dunkley-Willis.
Thank you. Alicia Willis from The Observer here. Just wanted to know, in terms of your following persons who came in on the various flights between March 18th and the 23rd, at last check you had indicated 400 had called in or had self-identified. Can you say how those efforts are going? Also, the Center for Disease Control is now saying that the transmission of the virus can now take place 1 to 3 days before the actual symptoms manifest. Is there a new caution that you want to issue where this concerned? What does that mean for us here in terms of social distancing? And also the wearing of masks. We're told that if you're not ill, you don't need to wear it, but where do we stand where that's concerned now?
Okay, I'm going to ask the PS to just address the issue of the tracking. I know the Ministry of National Security is working to get that detail and to begin or to continue monitoring of that. And then I'll ask the CMO to just address the clinical questions.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Minister. The first matter that we need to address is the fact that, again, we're appealing to all persons who came into the island at the 18th or after the 18th to first use the website, register, identify yourself so that you can be followed, and for you to stay at home. Self-quarantine for the required 14 days so that your symptoms can be tracked, and if you are exhibiting symptoms, you advise the Ministry of Health and Wellness of those symptoms. To date, there's a collaboration it's a multi-agency collaboration between the PICA, between Customs Agency of Jamaica, the Ministry of National Security, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The collation of all the persons who came into the island is on the way. To date, the security forces, along with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, have begun to track at least 500 of those persons through the listing that was received from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, along with the listing that was received from the Jamaica Customs Agency. And so the process has begun, and persons will be checked at home for their quarantine status. Already, we have seen where several homes have been checked, and some persons have not been adhering to the quarantine requirement, and the police have been instructed to first serve a notice and then to serve the necessary documentation for prosecution. The work for the review of the persons who are supposed to be in home quarantine will continue over the next week, and as we get the information on the results of the assessment, we will advise accordingly.
CMO.
You have asked what is our response to the CDC's report. Well, this is not really new guidance from the CDC. The CDC has always maintained that there's always a possibility that there could have some asymptomatic passing on of the infection, and I don't think that there has been any doubt to say that that is not possible. However, we still do know that the main mode in which the transmission is being carried along is from the symptomatic cases. In terms of our response to all the information that is out there, we have changed our surveillance protocols as time have gone by, and there has been changes in the guidance that has been coming to us. So at the present time, we are sampling all our suspected cases, and for all our confirmed cases, we are testing their close asymptomatic contacts. You recognize as well that in terms of community surveillance, we have formed a network across the island, a network that already exists in terms of our health centers and our hospitals. So we have several health centers and 1 or 2 hospitals in each parish. And from these, we are taking the samples of all our patients who are admitted for pneumonias, all our patients with severe acute respiratory infections, and we are taking samples of all the patients that are coming in with influenza-like illnesses. So from this, the aim of testing is to find out where there is any kind of new infection that is happening. So the suspected cases will present to us. But for the ones that are not presenting to us, what Jamaica wants to know is how we're going about trying to detect them. And this is how we're trying to detect them. We're taking sampling from almost every community where there's a health center. And remember that our health centers are so placed that they cover a 10-mile radius. So that's a pretty extensive network of sampling that we're doing to try to detect early whenever there is any evidence of community spread. Now, what have we found so far? What we have found so far in terms of the sampling of the contacts of our symptomatic patients is that it is really the very, very close contacts that are really getting infected. And even within the close contacts, we don't have all persons becoming infected. I mean, I would point out to you that of the 20-odd close contacts of the first case that we tested, and these persons would have been the persons who live in the same household with the person, was at the events where the persons were. Approximately 50% of those persons tested negative. They tested negative initially when we brought them into quarantine, and 14 days after they were in quarantine, we tested them again, and they also tested negative. So